Hello and welcome to Mastery Muse. Hello, David. We already had a chance to meet each other because of your own channel, Why Words Work, and because of Toastmasters. And the reason why I thought you were a perfect guest for this channel is because you mentioned then that you studied psychology and were also an opera singer, and now you're an executive voice coach. So I thought if there is one person who pursues their way and could be a role model, it's gonna be you. So welcome to this channel, and yeah, tell us your story.
Well, thank you, Marika, for having me on to Mastery Muse. It's wonderful to be here with you. And yeah, I've had a diverse background and journey so far. I'm actually Australian. I live in Vienna, Europe, and I have been here now for almost 8 years. And so, yeah, my journey, as you mentioned, took me early on when I left high school into psychology. Then at 23, I discovered I could sing professionally, like to a high standard. I hadn't had a singing lesson to that point, but I had had music as part of my life. And so I switched direction in that mid-20s period and said, right, I'm going to leave a corporate job. I went back to university. And then within a few years, was a full-time singer with Opera Australia, where I stayed for 8 years. Then my family and I, because my wife is also a professional opera singer, we moved to Europe for her engagement, which then led to me shifting again in my mid-30s to thinking about what else can I do. And that's where in 2017, I started my own voice coaching practice. And I've also worked a lot in language and now also in emotional intelligence. And so now I've even sort of shifted again. I'm almost in my mid-40s where you see the title there, language and communication coach. So I'm shifting even away from just voice into vocal intelligence, language intelligence, and emotional intelligence. So it's really this combination now that I see. So the journey's never over. And I like what perhaps for your viewers to also understand is that we are, I believe, constantly shifting and molding ourselves as well into wherever we are in our present circumstances.
Absolutely. And you know, when I'm listening to you, I reflect on my own journey, of course. I also came to Austria and needed to start from zero in a new country. I think this is also one of recurring themes.
Mhm.
So when you think about that, what tip could you give to somebody who considers moving to a new country, or how was it for you? Was it easy?
It wasn't, if I'm honest, it wasn't easy. So I often reflect, my wife had a wonderful opportunity to be at the Vienna Staatsoper, which was great. And so she often, I say, had friends, she had a community, she had opportunity. I didn't have that. And so I was working in different directions to try and find my own opportunities. And so originally, straight in to being here, I thought, well, I speak English very well. I'm educated. Why not do the CELTA, which I did to be a foreign language teacher? And I've worked and collaborated now with a company here in Vienna since then. And that gave me my first taste into the sort of corporate training environment. And I mean, advice that I would give is be prepared to start at the bottom. I
Mm,
did. I started at the bottom. I didn't have any experience, so I was given an hourly rate, and away I went. And I had to go from being one of the leading tenors at Opera Australia, earning a certain full-time wage and travel allowances, and doing interesting things, to now being really at the bottom
mm,
again, and having to also work in a pure freelance environment now as well. So in Austria, I'm self-employed, and so that was from the beginning. And it was a choice that I made, and so we could do it, of course, because my wife had that full-time security with
mm,
the Staatsoper. So it allowed me to explore. But when we do shift and explore, we may have to start at the bottom. And there's various authors around at the moment, one of which has said, yeah, be prepared. Are you earning or are you learning in
mm.
this moment? So sometimes we have moments where we're really earning well, things are going great, and there's less learning involved. And then we shift, like I did, and so the learning curve is much higher and the earning potential is a lot lower in that moment. But then that started to build and change, and I've been able to find new opportunities and sort of create a portfolio of work now that I'm very satisfied with, that gives me the energy and the earning capacity that I want as well.
That sounds so amazing. And I like the like distinguishing between learning and earning and like the changing balance in between those two. I remember when I worked at Swarovski, my boss at one time told me to just stop wanting to learn all the time and just try to use also the skills I had because I had this, the unlimited drive to keep learning new things. And
Yes.
that also helped me reflect like, okay, it's not, sometimes you need to think also for yourself which option to is better for you in a
Yeah.
specific situation.
Yeah.
And when you mention starting at the bottom, of course, if you start at the bottom, you can go in so many directions. So
Mhm.
maybe what were for you the like selection criteria or drivers?
Yeah. So when I decided to leave professional opera singing, so many people still say to me, David, do you still sing? Yeah, absolutely. I sing at a church, and I had from the beginning found this church community where I could share my voice. And as a side note, there was a famous singer at that church for a period. And so I actually wanted to connect mostly with him, which I got to do, but he has since passed away. And so I'm still part of the church because I get to sing every Sunday, just for the sake of it. And so if there are other churches or people who want a house concert, great, give me a call. The point is, I shifted, and what I really sat with myself and thought is, okay, what usable skills do I have from my previous work and occupation, and what can be easily transferable, but maybe shifting into something new? And I think that's the crucial thing, that if you are thinking about moving and shifting, what are your skills? What are your soft assets? And then what are your hard assets? So our hard assets are our things, of course, that we have financially that might keep us afloat, or that we have invested in that might buy us some time. But where we need to focus is on what are our soft assets. And for me, that was the voice. And so I knew that whatever I did, I had to share my voice. And so I did a master's also when I got here in human resources. And I thought, well, this will help. Austria loves titles, so it's nice to have a title. I'd always wanted to do my master's, and this seemed like the time to do it, because originally my wife just had a 2-year contract. And so I thought, well, in 2 years, we could be back to Australia. If we're back to Australia, chances are I might still be not doing opera professionally, or I might be still moving in this new direction. So now's the time to upskill, as you said, to learn and to find your own path in that learning. And so I have a background in coaching, which I started while I was still at the opera. And so I thought, yeah, coaching, speaking, performing, but in a different way. And I joined Toastmasters as well in 2015. And I realized that when I'm speaking, it's a performance. Just as when I'm singing, it's a performance. So there's the voice aspect transferred. And then I started to see, this training that I'm doing in company is me sharing my voice, but not only singing, but it's actually imparting words, engaging in conversation, and helping other people to grow. So the voice for me is right at the center of everything that I do. And even now, as I mentioned, this voice, language, and emotional intelligence kind of connection still puts voice and the way we communicate front and center. And so I've, shifting again, like, my value is being able to use that. So it's not so much a performance as it is an interaction with people now. And I think that is the main shift in my soft assets, in realizing that's where I'm good. And I know, for instance, this to be true because when I finished the master's, I was looking for internships. I was looking for an opportunity in a bigger company. And in my mid 30s, being also a white man, I come from privilege, and I have to acknowledge that. So I started to see, well, opportunities really weren't coming as I thought they might. And in particular, I applied for an intern role full time, and the person said in the interview, "Look, this is a role where you'll be on Excel spreadsheets and PowerPoints that you will create that somebody else will deliver. That's the role, and that's what all of our interns do." It was in HR, I thought, okay, this could be interesting, a step forward. And then I had a lovely Australian person who's living here, like a mentor, take me for coffee. And she said, don't take that role. You are a performer. You have to be in front of people. What you're doing as a language coach and trainer is actually going to be better for you. It's that moment where I went, Oh, okay. Yeah. And so I really started to see, don't just apply for jobs because you think you need a job or you think this is the next best step. But when you sit down with yourself and look at what are you good at? What do you value? What excites you? And I don't mean passion. I mean, what excites you in terms of daily activities? If you
Mm.
love sorting things, you love organization, that's a soft asset. Just as much as if you like to write and you can craft a beautiful blog or a letter or an email or a website, that's also a soft asset. It doesn't have to be what's going to make me $1 million tomorrow, but it's really thinking about what's going to excite me when I get out of bed. And so I've been able in the last 8 years now to really, outside of opera, to look at what things can I really do. And an opera singer, for instance, is great at memorization, is good at improvisation, is good at being able to take input from 5 or 6 different areas and meld it together and make this performance. And
Mm.
also coping with performance, anxiety, being in front of people. So these are all bankable soft assets that now when I teach executives and people and university students, they go, oh, and so I bring all of that knowledge to this new environment, you see. And so those were the soft assets that I had to see that I had that not everybody else has, but I could teach those to people. And so that's where through coaching and training now, I can offer these skills and expertise to people that they want to learn, that
Mm.
aren't automatic, so it's also realizing that not everybody has all the skills that you have and the experience that you have, and so you can make the most of that by actually writing it down. And it's somewhere here in my bookshelf, but I did a mind map,
Mhm.
where I drew out all the different areas and what does that mean, and how does that work, and how does it excite me. And so when you look at that bigger picture as well, you can start to say, I have actually more choices now about where I can apply that.
I love mind mapping and I can listen to you for hours. I think it's something about your voice.
Thank
But
you.
David, when you talk about like discovering the soft assets and like for you it's voice, and I can relate to so many things because like performance part that comes from my passion for dancing as well, and that's why I also enjoy speaking at Toastmasters.
Mhm.
I see it similarly, like use of space,
Yeah,
use of stage,
yeah,
the emotion. Um,
absolutely.
but were there any obstacles? Like, have you ever thought like, maybe it's not the right way? Have you had this moment of doubts, or was it quite straightforward for you? Like, okay, this is how I need to do things.
I certainly miss singing. I miss being
Mm.
on stage in the same way that my wife does this as well. But also for other reasons, I moved away. So every position or type of experience we have doesn't always come with great things. I remember rehearsals are 3 hours long, and sometimes I would warm up and I'd get there early and I'd be ready, and then I would sit there for 2 hours and 55 minutes of a 3 hour call. And so then I might get on as my little role in those last few minutes or not at all. And so I've spent 3 hours of my life thinking about the life now, not just the occupation, but 3 hours of my life where I wasn't really doing anything. And I can't do something else. I can't go and do my email administration. I can't go and run a side hustle in that time. I have to be focused and ready to jump in should I be asked. And that's just the circumstances of that. So
Mhm.
um thinking to the present, yeah, in my current iteration of work and how I bring value to people, yeah, it's taken these nearly 8 years to get to this point, and I don't think it's over. But a couple of things along the way that might help others, facing a similar moment of transition is to constantly reflect, is to look for, to look for opportunities, to say yes to everything. I don't think I've said no to too many things. If somebody's booked an hour with me and somebody else comes along with another hour, I say, I'm sorry, I'm already booked. But, make space, find those opportunities, and, open up yourself, of course, to your network. And I think, of course, we're on LinkedIn. That's a great platform. Zing here in Europe as well is also very popular. But that's where Toastmasters, that we're both in, is a great platform for networking. Just people to know you, people, and then thinking about how you can support others in your network as well. So early on, I joined, Toastmasters, and I said, well, I'm I'm a coach here, or I'm an English trainer. And everyone started to see me as the English teacher. And I started to think,
Mhm.
hang on, this is not. So also reflecting on where others see you. You see yourself in a certain place. You maybe have your identity, but that
Mhm.
doesn't necessarily, your future identity doesn't match where people might see you now.
Mhm.
That's why I started saying, no, I'm an executive voice coach. I'm an executive voice coach. And so I made up that title. I
Mhm.
put it on LinkedIn. It took me a while to get used to saying it. Now it just rolls off my tongue and it feels good and easy. And it's matching the identity of where people see me. Absolutely.
Mhm.
But as I say, I shift a little bit further now because I also see that there's value outside of just the vocal aspects that I deliver. But that also is then about thinking, again, what value do I bring? And so when you're listening to your clients and maybe they're complimenting you, what are they saying? I have
Mhm.
a CEO client in Upper Austria who has said, David, I love our conversations. I learn English, but at the same time, you're like a sparring partner. You're a business partner. But because my German is poor, he's also said, I can't employ you to come and do other things with us because we need those things in German.
Mhm.
So remember, your value is like English plus. And so
Mhm.
I go, okay, English plus means that I can be a language coach, but
Mhm.
I add all this value. Um,
That's
and
so inspiring. Mhm.
yeah,
Please go
and
ahead.
I was going to say, and I love learning. I think the point, maybe it's Zorobsky you mentioned before, that the person had said, stop learning, or why are you always learning? We have to be in this 21st century now, in this current climate of work. We have to be learning. That doesn't mean every single moment of every single day. Yeah, we have to have rest and recovery. But
Mm.
when we're learning things that feel and extend our skills, or confirm maybe our biases, or help us to just deepen our knowledge of a subject, then that's also inspiring you to do better work during the day.
Mm.
So a good Toastmasters meeting feels like a nice injection of understanding, of growth, of some new learning and development. And it's a nice way to spend an evening. There can be other things that we join and do through meetup, through local groups and conversation. We often think we have to join these big global conversations, but actually, there may be things within your area that people could use, and you can develop, wherever you are. It could be a little language group that you join, or a culture club, or people who have an shared interest in something. And so
Mm.
they often talk about warm and cold contacts in this same context. And so it's not your friend who's going to give you a job. It's actually that cold contact who you met on that day and that you can provide something to. So I still carry business cards with me because more often than not, someone says, have you got a card? And that's
Mm.
great. These days, my move is to get one of those electronic cards that you see on Instagram. You get it like a credit card. It's got an NFC chip in it, and I can go to your phone and go boop, boop, and then it will give you all of my details, and I could change that as I change. And so I
Mhm.
think that also reflects, the nature of what we do now. Is
Mhm.
that the business card? I have a whole box drawer for them that I'll never use. That really will just go in the bin at some point.
Mhm.
Whereas this one card is moldable and adaptable and changes. So I can just change the contents inside if I change job, or if I want to start my own business, or if I'm changing my job title. I can do all of that and it updates on that card. And so I think we need to think of ourselves a bit like the card, in that
Mhm.
we are updating, we are upskilling, we are doing things to extend, to understand, and to help us. But it's not always easy, and so I think that is also the point of transition: is see what and where you want to be, but
Mhm.
also recognize where everybody else sees you, and that takes longer to change.
Absolutely. I like the themes you mentioned. The importance of community kind of immediately brings this quote into my head that you're an average of 5 people you spend time with.
Mhm.
And if you want to develop in a certain direction, it really is valuable to start connecting with those people who could push you in the right direction or give you some skill or tip
Yeah.
that helps you get there a little bit faster. And the time is going really quickly with you. I need to cut out the time left, 10 minutes. But And another thing you mentioned was the titles and like the constant evolution. And I feel that the pace in which the world changes has increased a lot, and it still continues doing so. And I like also how you mentioned the difference between like printed business cards, kind of static, somewhere in the box. I might need them, I might need to print new ones, versus this new agile thinking. How can I make it once and make it fit me and the changes that are there? Like really refreshing approach to change, David. Thanks
Yeah.
for sharing that. Maybe just to wrap it up, what would be like your one message or one tip to the audience? And about like when I mention the audience, I think about people who want to learn some skills, don't know exactly where they will get them, and they try to figure out their own way in life.
I would say I often suggest to people empower yourself to take responsibility for your communication.
Empower
So,
yourself to take
yeah,
responsibility for your communication.
yeah. So as a communication coach, that's where I can add value to people. But I think when we understand what we're wanting to say and how we say it, it's a powerful combination. So
Mm,
often, and it goes beyond voice coaching and using your voice. It's about what words are you using, what body language are you using, how are you communicating to others to share your message, and what is your message. So
mm,
my message is that we all have to be responsible. We
mm,
have to be responsible, which means that when things happen and there are always triggers, how do we respond? How can
mm,
we remove ourselves to find the space to respond, to come back and respond appropriately when we want to? How can
mm,
we show up to every single conversation? And again, I thank you for this opportunity today, but I've showed up with that sense of, okay, what can I help your viewers with? How can I be not just talking about myself and stories, but to offer value to
mhm.
those who are watching? And so I'm on this quest at the moment as a language and communication coach, this next evolution for my net. When I buy this card, I'm going to whatever title I'm doing then. But to think about, when you show up to every single conversation, whether that's the supermarket cashier, whether that's the dry cleaner, the friend, your dog, or your family members, your workmates, that meeting at 5 o'clock on a Friday afternoon, like, let's be honest, those are the moments where we have to think about our communication. And it's not
Mm,
that we're trying to change the world and how we're trying to win new side contracts and develop business. It's not about that. It's about what feeling can you leave others with, and
mm,
how can you show up and contribute to that? So sometimes it doesn't work. Someone will say in German, hello, grüß Gott, and they don't want to talk. And I go, okay, cool, but they're not ready today. But then the next day, I might ask the same questions or have the same approach, and they feel chatty. And that's great. So we can connect a little bit further and we develop our relationships. We build trust,
mm,
connection, and we
mhm.
share emotion. And
Yes,
those three things for me are just critical to effective communication. So I really hope as one thing for your viewers that they can find a way to understand their communication, to work on it if they need to, and to seek the advice of how do they want to show up in this world and empower themselves to do it.
that's a very nice tip. And I immediately bring it to the level of how do we even talk with ourselves, this inner dialogue. I got so many conversations where people are just overwhelmed with their all mental spirals or like inner critic or some disempowering voices in our head.
Mhm.
So this also connects to me to like first individual level, and that also then translating to the trust and relationships that you mentioned and this connection that are really really essential in navigating our world.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, and on the personal side, I have a note here on my phone that's a widget that says, "Be a powerful and caring communicator."
Mm.
So I
Mhm.
don't say that to show off, but I say that, like, I look at that, every other day when I'm scrolling through my phone, and it's there.
That's an amazing life trick. This kind
Yeah,
of
it's just
reminds
there.
you of your intention, right? And once you
Yeah,
have the intention straight, you can
yeah,
act in a easier
yeah,
way because you don't
yeah.
have to reevaluate every single situation differently. You just ask yourself a question, how can I be this type of communicator in this particular situation? It's a
Absolutely. Yeah,
nice one. Oh,
yeah,
you inspired me to set up a widget for myself. I think I'm
yeah,
gonna write it.
yeah. I have one other quote there that you might like. That I watched this on a video about a drummer, a world famous drummer. As a child, he couldn't sit still, always tapping and doing things, and everyone thought he was a nuisance until his teacher gave him a set of drumsticks, his first set of drumsticks, and said, "I think you're a drummer. I see something in you." Tapped him on the shoulder in that way, and that happens so often in places like Toastmasters too. But at the end, this person said, are you the best in the world or the best for the world?
Hmm.
He is being the best for the world. And it just touched my heart so much that I say, right, how can I communicate to be the best for the world, for others, for my circle, for my community, as opposed to thinking I need to be the best in the world. And we live in a culture that tries to make us to be the best in the world rather than serving and being the best for the world.
That shows like the power of words. Again, just a small tiny word change and it changes everything. And I really resonate with this servant leadership mindset. I think it's the
Mhm.
most powerful and healing attitude that we can adopt in the current global phase that we are in.
Absolutely. More than ever, how do we show up and treat each other? How do we serve each other and serve the interests of others to then know that those will serve us, that we get back what we give. And these are truisms from all sorts of faiths and society and culture, but we lose that in the busyness of change and the busyness of noise that kind of exists around us, from everything that we absorb. So daily reflection, where am I going? What am I doing? Where do I want to be? What identity do I have? What others think of me? Sounds like a lot of work, but not if you do it every day. Just a little bit, 10 minutes, cup of coffee, keep a journal. And I think, I've been keeping a journal now for about 3 years. And
Mhm.
every day I write one page in my journal. That's it. And it
That's
helps me to sort of remain focused on these areas as well and reflect on where I'm going.
That's amazing. I'm not that regular with my diaries, but I notice the power that the written word has. And David, you dropped so many tips today. I am curious already what our users will remember or take away from our conversation today. And I invite them all to add the comments, share your takeaways in comments. I'm gonna write the comment myself just to give a prompt for this. And thank you so much for the conversation, David.
It's a
Where
pleasure.
can our users find you?
I'm on LinkedIn for sure. So same face, David Corcoran, my name, and you'll see Executive Voice Coach and EQ Business Advisor there. And I'm also on YouTube with my name, with the video cast, Why Words Work. So, Marika, you've been a guest on the podcast, and maybe you have viewers who would also like to be interviewed there with 5 words. So that's another space where I'm creating some content as well. And my website is davidcorcoran.com.au.
Thank you so much, David.
Pleasure.